The massive crystalline ship descended through Earth's atmosphere like a falling star, its prismatic hull catching and fracturing sunlight into rainbow cascades that painted the sky in impossible colors. Children across the world pressed their faces to windows, pointing and gasping in wonder, while adults gathered in anxious clusters, whispering uncertainties into the warm afternoon air. Dr. Sarah Chen stood among the hastily assembled delegation on the landing field outside Geneva, her heart hammering against her ribs as the alien vessel settled onto the concrete with surprising gentleness. The ship was beautiful in an utterly foreign way, its surface seeming to shift between solid matter and liquid light. No human technology could replicate such a feat, and that realization sent a chill down her spine. "Remember," whispered General Morrison beside her, his weathered face grim, "we know nothing about their intentions. Stay alert." The delegation consisted of Earth's finest minds and leaders, scientists, diplomats, military officers, and scholars from every major nation. They had spent weeks preparing for this moment, ever since the aliens had broadcast their message across every communication channel on the planet. The message had been simple, delivered in perfect English, Mandarin, Spanish, and dozens of other languages simultaneously. "We come as teachers. We wish to share knowledge with the children of Earth." Now, as a section of the crystalline hull simply melted away like morning mist, revealing a dark opening, Sarah found herself questioning everything humanity thought it knew about the universe. The first alien to emerge was tall and graceful, moving with fluid motions that seemed to defy gravity. Its body was humanoid but elongated, covered in what looked like scales that shifted color from deep blue to silver in the changing light. Most striking were its eyes, large, multifaceted like a dragonfly's, reflecting the world in countless tiny fragments. "I am ZYX Era of the teaching cast," the being said, its voice emanating not from any visible mouth but seeming to resonate directly in the minds of those present. "We have traveled far to offer your species the gift of knowledge." Ambassador Williams stepped forward, his diplomatic training keeping his voice steady despite the unprecedented nature of the encounter. "Welcome to Earth, ZYX Era. We are honored by your presence, though we must admit to some uncertainty about your educational intentions." ZYX Sarah's head tilted in what might have been amusement. "Uncertainty is natural. Your species is young, impulsive, driven by primitive emotions and short-sighted thinking. This is why you need guidance." The words struck the assembled humans like a physical blow. Dr. Chen felt her jaw clench involuntarily. Around her, she could see others struggling to maintain diplomatic composure as the alien continued. "Your technological development has far outpaced your wisdom. You possess weapons capable of destroying your world, yet you cannot even cooperate to heal your dying oceans. You reach for the stars while millions of your own kind suffer in poverty and ignorance. This is the hallmark of a species that requires intervention." "Intervention?" General Morrison's voice carried a sharp edge despite his attempts at restraint. "Education," ZYX Era corrected smoothly. "We do not conquer through force. We elevate through knowledge. Your children will learn the proper way to think, to organize society, to transcend the destructive impulses that have plagued your kind throughout history." Dr. Chen stepped forward, her scientific curiosity warring with a growing sense of unease. "What exactly do you propose to teach our children?" "Efficiency. Logic. The suppression of wasteful emotional responses. Your young ones will learn to see beyond the chaotic individualism that has brought your world to the brink of collapse. They will understand the beauty of unified purpose, of ordered thinking." The alien gestured, and the air before it shimmered. Images began to appear, holographic displays showing vast cities of perfect geometric beauty, populated by beings that moved in coordinated harmony. The architecture was stunning, all clean lines and impossible curves, but something about the scenes felt coldly sterile to human eyes. "Behold the consortium worlds," ZYX Era continued. 47 species have accepted our guidance and achieved perfect societal harmony. No war, no hunger, no waste. Each individual fulfills their assigned role with complete dedication. Crime and dissent are extinct concepts. What happened to their individuality?" Dr. Chen asked carefully. "Individuality is inefficient. It leads to conflict, to waste, to suffering. Our students learn to find fulfillment in service to the greater order. They become part of something beautiful and eternal. The images shifted, showing what appeared to be schools or academies. Young beings of various species sat in perfect rows, their faces blank and attentive as they absorbed lessons from alien instructors. There was something profoundly disturbing about their expressions, or rather, the complete lack of any expression at all. Your children will attend our learning centers, HFY announced. Beginning with the youngest, they will gradually be introduced to proper thinking patterns. The transition will be gentle but complete. And, if we refuse? Ambassador Williams asked quietly. The alien's multifaceted eyes seemed to dim slightly. Refusal leads to stagnation. Stagnation leads to extinction. We have observed 17 species that rejected our guidance. They are no longer capable of space travel or advanced technology. Most have reverted to pre-industrial states. Your choice is evolution or devolution. The threat was delivered without emotion, stated as simply as a natural law. The humans exchanged glances, each face reflecting the same mixture of fear and defiance. We will need time to consider your proposal, Ambassador Williams managed. Of course. We understand the difficulty of abandoning primitive attachment to chaos. You have 7 of your solar days to decide. After that, we will begin the education process with or without formal consent. The children must be saved from the destructive patterns of their elders. As if summoned by some invisible signal, more aliens emerged from the ship. They moved with the same fluid grace as HFY, carrying strange devices that hummed with energy. They began setting up what could only be described as a camp, their actions perfectly coordinated without any visible communication. One more thing, HFY added as the human delegation prepared to leave. We will be conducting demonstration lessons for those who wish to observe our methods. Perhaps seeing the immediate benefits will ease your concerns. Dr. Chen found herself speaking before she could stop herself. What makes you so certain that your way is the only right way? How do you know that diversity and individual thought aren't strengths rather than weaknesses? For the first time, something like surprise flickered across the alien's strange features. Your question reveals the exact kind of flawed thinking that must be corrected. There is only one optimal solution to any problem. Multiple approaches create inefficiency and conflict. This has been demonstrated across countless civilizations. But what if you're wrong? Dr. Chen pressed. What if the chaos and diversity you're trying to eliminate are actually essential to growth and innovation? HFY's response came without hesitation. We are never wrong. We have perfected the science of civilization. Your doubt is understandable but ultimately irrelevant. Truth does not require belief to be truth. As the human delegation retreated to their vehicles, Dr. Chen couldn't shake the image of those blank-faced students from the holographic display. The aliens spoke of elevation and perfection, but all she could see was the death of everything that made consciousness worthwhile. The ride back to the United Nations building was conducted in heavy silence. Each delegate was lost in their own thoughts, grappling with the magnitude of the choice before them. Submit to alien guidance and preserve human civilization at the cost of human nature, or resist and face potential technological regression or worse. That evening, emergency sessions convened in every major capital. The debate was fierce and immediate. Some argued that humanity had indeed proven itself incapable of wise governance, pointing to climate change, endless wars, and massive inequality as evidence of the aliens' claims. Others maintained that free will and individual liberty were worth any price, even extinction. Dr. Chen found herself in her laboratory long after midnight, staring at data streams from the alien ship. Their technology was certainly impressive, but, as she analyzed the energy patterns and material compositions, she began to notice something troubling. Everything the aliens did followed precise, predictable patterns. There was no variation, no experimentation, no deviation from established norms. For a species that claimed to have guided 47 civilizations to perfection, they showed remarkably little creativity in their approaches. Their ship, their equipment, even their movements seemed to follow rigid templates. It was as if they had achieved such perfect efficiency that they had lost the ability to adapt or innovate. Meanwhile, across the city, similar scenes played out as humanity's greatest minds wrestled with an impossible decision. In children's bedrooms around the world, young faces pressed against windows to catch glimpses of the alien ship's strange lights in the distance, unaware that their entire future hung in the balance. The aliens had given them 7 days. Already, the first day was drawing to a close, and humanity was no closer to a unified response. The clock was ticking, and the fate of every child on Earth depended on what happened next. In the alien ship, ZYX-era communed with the collective mind, sharing observations about human resistance patterns. The predictions had been accurate. This species would prove more stubborn than most. But the outcome was inevitable. It always was. The 47 previous civilizations had taught them that resistance was merely a temporary delay in the grand design. Soon, the children of Earth would join the eternal order, and another chaotic species would be saved from itself. The process was as certain as mathematics, as absolute as the laws of physics. At least, that's what ZYX-era believed. The third day brought an unexpected development. ZYX-era had announced that they would conduct a public demonstration of their teaching methods, and, despite every security protocol screaming against it, the world's leaders had agreed. They needed to understand exactly what they were facing. The demonstration was held in Central Park, chosen for its open space and symbolic significance. Barriers had been erected to keep crowds at a safe distance, but thousands of people gathered anyway, their faces a mixture of curiosity and fear. News crews from every major network focused their cameras on a small pavilion of impossible architecture that the aliens had constructed overnight. Dr. Chen stood with the observation group, a select collection of educators, psychologists, and child development experts from around the globe. Beside her, Dr. Raj Patel, a renowned child psychologist from Mumbai, nervously adjusted his tablet, ready to record every detail of what they were about to witness. "I don't like this," whispered Dr. Elena Kozlova, a Russian neuroscientist. "Using children as test subjects, even willing ones." "The parents consented," replied Dr. James Fletcher, though his British accent couldn't hide his own unease. "They understand the stakes." 5 children had volunteered for the demonstration, their parents convinced either by curiosity or the promise that their children would gain access to unimaginable knowledge. The youngest was 6 years old, the eldest 12. They sat in a semicircle before ZYX-era, their faces bright with the natural excitement children showed when presented with something new and strange. 8-year-old Marcus Williams bounced slightly in his chair, his dark eyes wide with wonder as he stared at the alien teacher. Beside him, 10-year-old Li Wei sat with perfect posture, her hands folded neatly in her lap, though her gaze darted constantly between ZYX-era and the strange crystalline devices arranged around them. "Welcome, young minds," ZYX-era's mental voice touched each child individually, and Dr. Chen watched their expressions shift to surprise and delight. "Today you will experience your first taste of true understanding." The alien gestured, and the crystalline devices began to hum. A soft, shimmering field enveloped the children, and their faces immediately became more relaxed, almost dreamy. Dr. Chen's instruments detected complex electromagnetic patterns washing over the demonstration area. "We begin with mathematics," ZYX-era announced to both children and observers. "Not the crude approximations your schools teach, but the fundamental harmonies that govern all existence." Images began appearing in the air before the children, geometric patterns of breathtaking beauty and complexity. Dr. Chen recognized some of them as higher-dimensional mathematical constructs that would normally take years of advanced study to comprehend, yet the children seemed to absorb the concepts effortlessly. "Amazing," breathed Dr. Patel, his fingers flying over his tablet. "Their neural activity is off the charts, but their stress indicators are virtually non-existent." Marcus raised his hand, his voice clear and confident. "Teacher ZYX-era, I can see how the golden ratio connects to the spiral patterns, but why does my mom's garden not follow these perfect forms?" The question seemed to catch ZYX-era off guard for just a moment. "Natural growth is chaotic and inefficient. Proper cultivation follows mathematical principles for optimal resource utilization." "But the bees seem to like the messy parts best," Marcus continued. "They spend more time in the wildflower section than the neat rows of vegetables." "Maybe chaos has a purpose?" Dr. Chen felt a chill run down her spine. The boy was asking the same questions that had been troubling her since the aliens' arrival. She watched ZYX-era's response carefully. These are primitive creatures driven by instinct rather than intelligence. Their preferences are irrelevant to optimal design principles. The alien's mental voice carried a note of dismissal, but Dr. Chen noticed a subtle shift in the electromagnetic patterns surrounding the children. The lesson continued, moving from mathematics to physics to what ZYX era called social harmonics, the proper organization of civilization. The children absorbed it all with supernatural ease, their young minds apparently malleable enough to accept concepts that would challenge adult experts. But Marcus continued to ask questions. If everyone thinks the same way, who comes up with new ideas? He wondered aloud during the social harmonics segment. New ideas are unnecessary when optimal solutions already exist, ZYX era replied, though Dr. Chen noticed the answer came slightly slower this time. But what if the optimal solution changes? My dad's computer used to be the best, but now it's slow compared to new ones. Maybe what's optimal now won't be optimal forever. This time, there was a definite pause before ZYX era responded. Technological progression follows predictable patterns. We have calculated all possible developments. 12-year-old Sarah Chen, no relation to the observing scientist, leaned forward. Have you calculated what happens when someone calculates something you haven't calculated yet? The question created what could only be described as a glitch in ZYX Sarah's presentation. The crystalline devices flickered momentarily, and the other alien technicians exchanged what might have been concerned glances. Such scenarios are mathematically impossible, ZYX era stated firmly. We have accounted for all variables. But if you've accounted for all variables, press 10-year-old Li Wei, then you already know exactly what I'm going to say next, right? Of course. Then why are you surprised when we ask questions you don't expect? The silence that followed was deafening. Dr. Chen realized she was holding her breath as she watched the most advanced alien civilization in known space struggle to answer a 10-year-old's logic puzzle. Your questions reveal the chaotic thinking patterns that must be corrected, ZYX era finally responded. This is precisely why education is necessary. But Marcus wasn't finished. Teacher ZYX era, you said you've guided 47 other species to perfection. What do they do now that they're perfect? They exist in harmony, fulfilling their designated roles within the consortium. But what do they create? What new things do they discover? If they're already perfect, do they just stay the same forever? For the first time since the aliens' arrival, ZYX era seemed genuinely uncertain. The electromagnetic field around the children fluctuated wildly, and Dr. Chen's instruments recorded massive spikes in neural activity from all 5 young participants. Perfection requires no change, the alien teacher said, but even its mental voice seemed less confident. That sounds really boring, 6-year-old Tommy Peterson piped up for the first time. I like figuring out new things. If I already knew everything, what would I do all day? The simple innocence of the question hit like a thunderbolt. Dr. Chen watched as something unprecedented happened. ZYX era appeared to be experiencing doubt. You would find satisfaction in performing your role efficiently, the alien managed. But what if I don't want the role you pick for me? Tommy continued with the relentless logic that only children possessed. What if I want to pick my own role? Or make up a new role that nobody's thought of yet? The crystalline devices began to emit a high-pitched whine. The other aliens moved closer to their leader, their coordinated movements for the first time showing something that looked like concern. Individual desires lead to chaos and inefficiency, ZYX era stated, but the words sounded like a mantra being repeated to convince the speaker as much as the audience. Marcus stood up, his small frame somehow commanding attention from beings that had traveled across the galaxy. Teacher ZYX era, I have one more question. Proceed, the alien said, though its multifaceted eyes seemed to dim slightly. If chaos and individual thinking are so bad, then why are we the first students to ask these questions? Why didn't any of the other 47 species think to ask them? The question hung in the air like a physical presence. Dr. Chen realized that the boy had inadvertently struck at the heart of something fundamental. She looked around at her fellow observers and saw the same realization dawning on their faces. ZYX era's response, when it came, was barely a whisper in their minds. They were more cooperative than your species. Or maybe, Marcus said gently, with the kind of devastating insight that only children possessed, maybe they stopped asking questions too soon. The demonstration ended abruptly. The crystalline devices powered down, the shimmering field dissipated, and the children blinked as if waking from a pleasant dream. They seemed unchanged, still bright and curious and fundamentally themselves, but something had shifted in the alien teacher. As the families collected their children and the crowds began to disperse, Dr. Chen noticed that ZYXera remained motionless in the pavilion, staring at the spot where Marcus had been sitting. The other aliens moved around their leader with what looked suspiciously like protective concern. That evening, the world's communication networks buzzed with analysis and debate. The demonstration had been broadcast globally, and humanity had witnessed something unprecedented, a species that claimed intellectual superiority being challenged by the innocent questions of human children. In secure conference rooms around the world, emergency meetings convened. The alien ultimatum still stood, 4 more days to make a decision. But now the choice seemed different somehow. The questions the children had asked weren't just challenging the aliens' methods, they were exposing fundamental flaws in the entire premise of perfect order. Dr. Chen found herself back in her laboratory, but this time she wasn't alone. Marcus Williams sat across from her, having been brought in by his parents for what was being called a debriefing session, though in reality, the adults were the ones hoping to learn something. Dr. Chen, Marcus said, swinging his legs from the chair that was too big for him, why do you think the alien teacher got so confused by our questions? Dr. Chen considered her words carefully. What do you think, Marcus? The boy thought for a moment, his face scrunched in concentration. I think maybe they're really smart, but they forgot how to wonder about things. Like, they know all the answers, but they forgot how to ask questions. The simple profundity of the observation hit Dr. Chen like a revelation. A species so focused on optimal solutions that they had eliminated the very curiosity that drove innovation and growth. The 47 perfected civilizations weren't elevated, they were lobotomized. Marcus, she said carefully, what do you think we should tell them? The 8-year-old smiled with the wisdom that sometimes emerged from complete innocence. Maybe we should teach them how to ask questions again? As night fell over Earth, the alien ship remained silent, its crystalline hull no longer casting rainbows across the sky. Inside, ZYXera and the teaching cast faced their first true crisis in millennia, the possibility that their perfect system might be fundamentally flawed. The children of Earth had done something no previous species had managed. They hadn't just resisted the alien education, they had educated their would-be teachers. The question now was whether either species was prepared for the consequences of that revelation. The crystalline ship had been silent for 2 full days. No communications, no movement, no signs of the coordinated activity that had marked the aliens' arrival. The deadline was now only 2 days away, and humanity waited with growing anxiety for some indication of what would come next. Dr. Chen had barely slept since the demonstration. Her mind kept returning to Marcus's innocent observation about the aliens forgetting how to wonder. The more she thought about it, the more she realized the boy had identified something crucial, not just about the aliens, but about the nature of intelligence itself. She wasn't alone in her sleeplessness. Around the world, scientists, philosophers, and educators were grappling with the same revelation. The children's questions hadn't just challenged alien assumptions, they had forced humanity to examine its own relationship with knowledge, creativity, and the value of uncertainty. On the morning of the 6th day, everything changed. The communication came not as the usual direct mental contact, but as a hesitant transmission broadcast to every radio and television receiver on Earth. ZYXera's voice, when it finally emerged from speakers worldwide, carried something that had been completely absent before: uncertainty. People of Earth, the message began, and even in those simple words, Dr. Chen could hear a fundamental shift. The absolute confidence was gone, replaced by something almost vulnerable. We request a meeting. Not to deliver ultimatums or demonstrate superiority, but to ask for guidance. The admission sent shockwaves through every government and academic institution on the planet. The species that had claimed to have perfected the science of civilization was asking for help. This time, the meeting was held in a simple conference room at the United Nations building. No grand demonstrations, no intimidating displays of technology. ZYXera arrived alone, having shed the crystalline devices and energy fields that had previously surrounded every alien appearance. In the plain fluorescent lighting, the alien teacher looked somehow smaller, more fragile. The human delegation was different this time too. Alongside the usual diplomats and scientists sat Marcus Williams and the other children from the demonstration. Their parents had initially resisted, but the children themselves had insisted. Marcus had put it simply, if this is about learning, then all the learners should be here. ZYX began speaking immediately upon entering the room, the words tumbling out with an urgency that was strikingly human in its intensity. For 3,000 of your years, we have guided species toward what we believed was perfection. 47 civilizations have accepted our teachings and achieved the harmony we promised. They exist now in perfect order, without conflict, without waste, without. The alien paused, struggling with concepts that clearly had no equivalent in its mental vocabulary. Without questions, Marcus finished quietly. Yes. The admission came like a sigh. We have been in communion with the collective mind since your children spoke. For the first time in millennia, we examined what we had actually achieved. The 47 species exist in perfect stasis. They perform their roles efficiently, but they have stopped growing, stopped discovering, stopped dreaming, added 10-year-old Li Wei. ZYX Sarah's multifaceted eyes focused on the girl with an intensity that was somehow desperate. We do not understand this concept of dreaming. Our sleep cycles serve only physiological restoration. But, when you speak of it, there is a resonance in our consciousness that we cannot categorize. Dr. Elena Kozlova leaned forward, her scientific curiosity overriding diplomatic protocol. What exactly happened when the children asked their questions? Your technology appeared to malfunction. Not malfunction, ZYX corrected. Transformation. The children's questions created what we can only describe as recursive paradoxes in our thought processes. For the first time, we found ourselves contemplating scenarios we had not predicted. The experience was overwhelming. Overwhelming how? Dr. Chen asked gently. The alien was quiet for a long moment before responding. We experienced something we had eliminated from our consciousness eons ago. We felt excited. The word hung in the air like a revelation. An alien species that had achieved perfect logical efficiency had rediscovered emotional engagement through the simple curiosity of human children. The collective mind has been in constant session since your demonstration, ZYX continued. We have reviewed our interactions with all 47 guided species. In every case, we identified the moment when they stopped asking questions. We had interpreted this as successful education. Now we understand it as death, said 12-year-old Sarah Chen with the brutal honesty of childhood. Not of their bodies, but of their minds. You killed their curiosity. Instead of being offended, ZYX seemed relieved to have the concept named. Yes. We have been gardeners of intelligence, but we have been pruning away the very branches that reach toward new light. Marcus raised his hand as if he were in a classroom. Teacher ZYX, can I ask you something? Please. What was your species like before you became teachers? Before you found the perfect way to do everything? The question triggered something extraordinary. For the first time since their arrival, ZYX form began to change. The rigid, efficient posture relaxed slightly. The color-shifting scales took on warmer hues. Most remarkably, something that could only be described as nostalgia flickered across the alien's features. We were chaotic, ZYX said slowly, as if rediscovering forgotten words. We built impossible structures that served no logical purpose except beauty. We told stories that had no educational value beyond the joy of sharing them. We spent entire seasons pursuing questions that had no practical applications. What happened to change that? Dr. Patel asked. We encountered the predecessor collective, the first species to achieve perfect order. They taught us efficiency. We thought we were being elevated, but now. The alien's voice trailed off. Now you realize you were being diminished, Dr. Chen finished. The irony is profound, ZYX continued. We have spent millennia perfecting the same process that nearly destroyed our own creativity.
We became teachers of limitation rather than guides to possibility.
Tommy Peterson, the youngest of the children, tugged on his mother's sleeve until she lifted him so he could see over the conference table.
Are you sad? He asked ZYXera directly.
The question seemed to shatter something in the alien.
We had forgotten that sadness was possible. But, yes, small human, we are experiencing what you would call sadness.
We mourn for what we have lost and for what we have taken from others. But, being sad means you can be happy too, Tommy continued with the unassailable logic of a 6-year-old.
You just have to remember how.
Ambassador Williams finally spoke, his diplomatic training struggling to process the unprecedented nature of the conversation.
What are you proposing, ZYXera? What do you want from us? The alien's response was barely audible. We want to learn how to wonder again.
The silence that followed was profound. Humanity had expected to negotiate their freedom from alien education. Instead, they were being asked to become the teachers. Dr. Chen found herself speaking before she had fully formed the thought. The children could teach you.
They're naturally curious about everything.
They ask questions that adults have learned not to ask. But, we could all learn from each other, Marcus added excitedly. You know lots of science and math and stuff. We know how to play and imagine and wonder about things.
Maybe perfect isn't about having all the answers. Maybe perfect is about always having new questions. ZYXera's entire form seemed to brighten.
This concept of mutual learning, it is not in our databases. It suggests that knowledge is not a finite resource to be optimally distributed, but a renewable energy that grows through sharing.
Exactly, said Li Wei.
Like my grandmother always says, a shared joy is doubled, but shared learning is multiplied infinitely.
Over the following hours, an unprecedented negotiation took place.
Not a negotiation for surrender or dominance, but for something entirely new, a partnership in discovery. ZYXera revealed that the predecessor collective still existed, ruling over a vast network of perfected species. They would not approve of this deviation from established protocols. But the teaching caste was beginning to question everything they had been taught. We face a choice, the alien explained. Return to the collective with news of another successful conversion, or admit that we have discovered a fundamental flaw in our entire worldview.
What happens if you admit the flaw? Dr. Chen asked. Unknown.
We have never questioned the predecessor's teachings. But, after experiencing wonder again, the thought of returning to absolute certainty seems unbearable. Marcus stood up, his young face serious with determination.
Then, don't go back. Stay here and help us learn together.
You can teach us about the universe, and we'll teach you about imagination and dreams and what it feels like to not know what's coming next. The proposition was revolutionary. An alien species choosing to abandon their perfected civilization to rediscover the chaos of growth and discovery alongside humanity. The other species you taught, Saracen said thoughtfully, could they learn to wonder again too? ZYXera considered this. Perhaps. If curiosity can be rekindled in us, it might be possible to reawaken it in them as well. But it would require abandoning everything we thought we knew about proper education.
Good, said Tommy with 6-year-old decisiveness. Proper is boring. As the day wore on, the framework of an extraordinary alliance began to take shape.
The aliens would share their vast scientific knowledge while learning to rediscover creativity and wonder. Humanity would gain access to technologies and insights beyond their current understanding while teaching the art of questioning, dreaming, and embracing uncertainty.
But the arrangement came with risks. The predecessor collective would eventually notice the deviation.
Other teaching castes might be sent to correct what would be seen as a catastrophic failure in protocol. Let them come, Dr. Chen said with surprising firmness. By then, we'll have something they've never encountered before, a civilization that combines advanced knowledge with unlimited curiosity. We'll be ready for them. Marcus grinned with the confidence of childhood. Plus, we'll have the best teachers in the galaxy, ones who remember that the best questions are the ones nobody's thought to ask yet. As the formal agreements were signed and the news was broadcast to the world, humanity prepared for a future unlike anything they had imagined. Not conquest by superior beings, not salvation from benevolent teachers, but partnership in the greatest adventure of all, the endless journey of discovery. The crystalline ship began broadcasting again, but now its signals carried a different message to the stars. For the first time in 3 millennia, a teaching caste was asking for permission to remain and continue learning. The request was accompanied by thousands of new questions generated by their human students, questions about beauty and purpose and the value of uncertainty. In children's bedrooms around the world, young minds that had briefly held the fate of their species in their hands returned to normal childhood concerns. But they slept knowing that their questions had changed the course of galactic history.
And, in the alien ship, ZYX Era experienced something unprecedented, a dream.
In it, impossible structures grew toward unknown horizons, and beings of countless species worked together to ask questions that had never been asked before. The teacher had become a student, and the universe was richer for it.